Data is like a waste table using the given data. That is security and ethics.
If you are new here, this channel is all about educative stuffs. So don't forget to subscribe, hit that notification bell and smash that like button for instant updates. Hello guys, welcome to this video. In this video we'll be seeing about memory and data storage. There are three subtopics which we'll be seeing in this video, which are file formats, lossy and lossless compression and memory and storage data. So first, coming to file formats. There are n number of file formats in this world, and these five are the most common ones. And we'll be seeing about all these five file formats in this video, which are MIDI, MP3, MP4, JPEG, and TXT. So let's move on to the next slide. Coming to the first file format, MIDI. MIDI is actually Musical Instrument Digital Interface. And one special thing about this is that MIDI doesn't store any kind of music or sound, but it does store commands. And these kind of commands include note, key press, or things like that, and a note, which indicates that a key on an electrical keyboard, guitar, or any kind of instrument has been pressed or released to produce or stop producing a musical note. And key press is like this indicates how hard the key has been pressed. And there are also additional bytes required, which are pitch byte and velocity byte. Pitch byte tells the MIDI device which note to play, and the velocity byte tells the device how loud to play the note. If you are recording a MIDI file and you want to play back the MIDI file in an instrument, then you would have to use a sequencer software, since the MIDI file is not recognizable in its raw form. And if you take a MIDI file, the size of the file is very less than the MP3, because as said, the MIDI file only stores commands. And the extension that a MIDI file uses is .mid. Hope you have got an idea of what MIDI is. So let's move on to the next file format. Coming on to MPEG-3 and MPEG-4, commonly known and called as MP3 and MP4. So first, focusing on MP3, MP3 uses lossy audio compression to store sounds and other kinds of musics in MP3 format. So seeing the term lossy audio compression, we'll be talking about what lossy and lossless is in the forthcoming slides. So seeing about audio compression, the compression technology of the MP3 will reduce the size of a normal music file by about 90%. For example, an 80 megabyte music CD can be reduced to 8 megabytes by using MP3 compression technology. This is achieved through a method called perpetual music shaping, where it removes sounds that the human ear can't hear properly. So using this method, certain parts of the music can be removed without affecting the quality too much. It is not just the compression algorithm that decides the quality of an MP3 file. There is something called as bit rate. This is the number of bits per second used when creating the MP3 file. Bit rates are roughly between 80 and 320 kilobytes per second. Usually, a bit rate of 200 or higher gives a good sound quality close to a normal CD. So this is about MP3, and moving on to the MP4. MP4 or MPEG-4 files are slightly different to MP3 files. This format allows the storage of multimedia files rather than just sound. Like music, videos, photos, and animation can all be stored in an MP3 format, and also MP4 format is good when it comes to streaming over the internet. So hope you understood about MP3 and MP4. Let's move on to the next slide. The next file format is text and number file formats. So numbers can be stored in different file formats like real, integer, date, time, concurrency. Real is like where you get a decimal value, like 2.7, 5.3, like those kind of things. And integer is like a whole number, 3, 4, 5. And dates is like all we know, like 12 by 11 by 2014 or things like that. And time is like hours, minutes, and seconds, and all those things will be coming on. And when it comes to currency, it's like rupees, 50, or $15, those kind of things can become under currency. So if you see number file formats, we should be very careful about choosing the correct file format, because we might be having to enter a currency, but we'll be storing the currency value in a real or an integer thing. At that time, if the chosen form is needs to be done some kind of processing or any kind of compression, that tends to have an error. So at that time it doesn't work. If you are going to enter a currency, then it must be of the file format currency, so that the number file format can undergo a lossless compression without any kind of errors. So coming on to text files are stored in a format called ASCII format. So what ASCII format is that for each and every character that you type in the keyboard, it has a preset ASCII value. Like say for an example, a real-time example where if you type a capital C, it has the ASCII value 67, and for capital O, it is 79. So like this, every key in your keyboard will have a preset ASCII value, and that is how text are being represented and stored in your computers. And text files can also undergo file compression, but they use a bit complex algorithm that work on redundancy or repeated sections of the word. For better understanding, we can just take the example here, which is fear leads to anger, anger leads to hatred. So this will be compressed using the compression algorithm, like it will be storing the repeated values in a dictionary. Like say the repeated values in this sentence is leads to anger. So all these three words are being repeating twice. So what happens is that the leads will be given a value of example say 1, and 2 will be given a value of 2, anger will be given a value of 3. So this 1, 2 and 3 number which represent here will represent the words leads, and 2 will represent the word 2, and 3 will represent the word anger. So this is how. So if you see the size that has been reduced, the sentence here, fear leads to anger, anger leads to hatred, has a memory unit of 35. So memory unit is nothing but it is the length of the sentence without the spaces. So for this sentence it has nearly like 35 memory units, but for the compressed one, it has something like 17 memory units. Yes, exactly 17 memory units. So you can see the size that has been reduced. Nearly like 50% of the data has been reduced. So this is what the text compression algorithm can do. So this is all about text and number file formats. So let's move on to the next subtopic. So coming on to JPEG, Joint Photographic Experts Group. So JPEG is a file format used to display images. More than to tell it as file format, it is better to say as a compression algorithm. Because for example, if we take a 2048 into 1536 pixel image, a TIFF or a BMP image. So for those who doesn't know what TIFF or BMP image is, TIFF and BMP image is the highest quality image, because they are not compressed, they are the totally uncompressed format. So coming back to the point, for 2048 into 1536 pixel TIFF or a BMP image, it would cost you a space, or it would cost you around 9 megabytes of your memory or space. But if you compress that image into a JPEG format, then the size of the image will be unimaginably low, because the 9 megabytes image file will be reduced to around 1.8 megabytes, or even lower to around 0.6 megabytes. That is the capability of the JPEG compression algorithm. But one drawback in this JPEG file is that if you compare the 9 megabytes BMP image and this JPEG file, the difference would be not much, but only 70% of the data will be compressed. The other 30% of the data will be lost. So lost means lost. It can never be recoverable. So the best example to explain you this is to look at the down image where the wheel of the car, is being compressed with a JPEG algorithm and it changes into B. There is a sizable or a kind of just minimal loss of quality, but if the same B image is being compressed with a JPEG compression algorithm, then it produces a image C where the quality is much lower. So the pixel is being lost. So nearly 30% of the quality is lost each time you compress the image within JPEG compression algorithm. But this doesn't mean JPEG is really useless, because a certain amount of file compression can take place without any real loss of quality. There will be a minimal loss, but you cannot see it through your eyes. So in that way, JPEG will really reduce the data at the same time give you a better quality. So this is about JPEG. So yes, let's move on to the next slide. Coming to the most awaited slide. The reason I'm saying most awaited is because in the previous slides there would be terms like lossy, lossless compression and all, and I would have said you that I will be explaining in the forthcoming slides. And this is exactly the slide which I'm going to explain you that. So types of file compression. There are two types of file compression which are lossy and lossless. So I think the term itself explains you all about what it means. So lossy file compression is that while compressing a file, data is lost during compression, and that data lost cannot be retrieved while uncompressing, or the data is permanently lost. So this is what lossy compression is, and these lossy compressions are very useful when coming to compressing images and audio files. As said before, when compressing images, even a small quality loss is unnoticeable and it's okay for the loss to exist. So at that point of time, lossy compression is really useful. So coming on to lossless compression. Lossless compression is the total opposite of lossy compression, because if you compress a file using a lossless compression, no data is lost. That means once you uncompress the file, even a bit of data will be unchanged. That means you will get the original file when you uncompress the compressed file. So these kind of lossy compression will be used in areas like compressing text files or code scripts. Especially when talking about code scripts, even if a single line or even a single word in a program code is being changed, then the whole program will be malfunction or will not run. So at that time, lossless compression is really good. As I said, this is all about lossy and lossless compression. Before moving on to the next subtopic, make sure you check the description for handwritten notes on CS IGCSE for theory. So yes, let's move on to the next slide. So coming on to the last subtopic of this video, memory and storage. There are three types of memory and storage devices, which are primary memory, secondary storage, and offline storage. What these three types of memory mean is that primary memory is computer memory that a processor or computer accesses first or directly, and a secondary storage is a non-volatile long-term storage. Without secondary storage, all the program and the data which have been stored in your computer will be lost. That's where all your programs, photos, images, videos, everything will be stored. And talking about offline storage is a kind of removable secondary storage, because offline storage is a storage that must be physically connected or inserted into a computer system every time you want to use it, which is like pen drives, CDs, and all those kind of. And we'll be looking deep into these three types of memory and storage devices in the next slides. Primary memory. There are two types of primary memory currently in use, which are RAMs and ROMs. RAM is random access memory, and in RAM there are two types, which are DRAM and SRAM. We'll talk about that later. First, let's see what a RAM is. So, a RAM is a volatile temporary memory. That means the contents of the memory are lost when the power to the RAM is turned off. And RAMs are used to store data, files, or part of the operating system that are currently in use. Like say if you are seeing this video in YouTube application or in Google, then you are using the YouTube, then you are using the YouTube or Google application. So the application contents will be stored in your RAM. So now coming to DRAM and SRAM. DRAM is nothing but dynamic random access memory. So dynamic RAM uses transistors and capacitors to store the bits. Like capacitor stores zeros and ones and transistor acts like a switch to control the chip or the circuit. And DRAMs need to be constantly refreshed because capacitors needs to be recharged every 15 microseconds, otherwise it would lose its value. If it wasn't refreshed, the capacitor's charge would leak away very quickly, leaving every capacitor with a charge value 0. And we don't want that to happen, so we are constantly refreshing the DRAM. And one specialty about DRAM is that it is less expensive to manufacture, that means it's cheaper, and it has a higher storage capacity than SRAM, and they consume less power. And coming to SRAM, SRAM is static RAM. One big difference between SRAM and DRAM is that they doesn't need to be constantly refreshed, because unlike DRAM, SRAM uses something called as flip-flops to store a bit of information. That means it doesn't rely on capacitors or transistors which constantly need to be refreshed. So it is one advantage of SRAM, and one more advantage of SRAM is that they are faster compared to DRAM, because when the processor needs to get something from the SRAM, it just takes like 25 nanoseconds. But if the same processor needs to take the same contents from the DRAM, it takes nearly like 60 nanoseconds. It is just a couple of nanosecond difference, but still, when you compare the speed of both, SRAMs are faster. And that is about RAM. So moving on to ROM. ROM is read-only memory, and ROMs are non-volatile. That means the contents of the memory remain even when the power to the ROM is turned off, and they are used to store system startup programs or instruction. Example of it is BIOS. Like if you first start the computer, it runs a program to just boot up your computer. So all those programs will be stored in your ROM, and the data or the contents of the ROM chip can only be read by the processor. It cannot be changed. So this about primary memory. Let's move on to the secondary storage devices. There are two types of secondary storage devices that are being commonly used. They are HDD and SSD. HDD is hard disk drive. So HDD is still now the common method of data storage. Data in an HDD is stored in digital form in the magnetic surfaces of the disk, which is sectors and tracks. And HDD has a number of platters, which is disk which spins nearly 7,000 times per second, and the read and write head moves from center to the edge of the disk 50 times per second. Even though that 50 times appear to you as a big number, but it isn't, because latency is an issue in HDD. Latency is the time it takes for specific block of data on a data track to rotate around the read and write head. When compared to other devices like RAM, HDD is pretty slow in read and write operations, since because the latency of the HDD is slow. And good example of that would be sometimes the user must be seeing messages such as not responding, please wait, or these kind of things. This is a common example of the latency, where the latency of the HDD is low. But if you take the case of SSD, latency is not an issue. SSD is solid state drives, and unlike HDD, SSDs doesn't have any kind of moving parts, and the data in an SSD is stored in millions of tiny transistors. SSD shares a very good advantage when it comes to HDD in storing things, because SSD is more reliable because there are no moving parts to go wrong. And SSDs are considered lighter, which suits for laptops, and they are faster and they use less power to work, and they are also much cooler than the HDDs. And one more major thing is that they are faster than the HDD, and that is what latency is. But one big drawback about SSD is that their longevity is very less, because most solid state devices are considerably rated at only 20 GB write operations per day over a 3-year period. This is known as SSD endure, which is really low, and this is the reason why SSD technology is not used in servers where huge number of write operations take place every day. So this is the only drawback of SSD. Hope you understood about HDD and SSD. So let's move on to offline storage devices. Coming to the final subtopic of this video, offline storage devices. So in offline storage devices, we'll be first seeing about what optical storage devices are. Optical storage devices are devices that require light to do their functions. Best examples of optical storage devices are CDs, DVDs, and Blu-ray discs. And if you take the CDs and DVDs, it uses a red color laser light for its read and write operations. And CDs and DVDs use a single spiral track to store data in means of pits and bumps. To visualize what these pits and bumps really look in the CDs, you can just see the image which clearly shows the pits and bumps, and these pits and bumps represent zeros and ones. When these pits and bumps are sequenced in a correct manner, they will be able to represent large amount of zeros and ones. That means they will be able to store a large amount of data. And CDs and DVDs can be read or read and write, which means that CDs and DVDs can only be read. That means once the contents of the CD or DVD is written, they cannot be changed. They can only be read, or in a means of read and write, they can also be read. At the same time, the contents of the CD can be changed, deleted, or any kind of stuffs. Since I've been saying about CDs and DVDs in a common manner, that doesn't mean they both are the same technology. DVD technology is slightly different to that used in CDs. The one main difference is that DVD technology use dual layering, which considerably increases the storage capacity. Basically, what dual layering means is that there are two individual recording layers. Two layers of the standard DVD are joined together with a transparent polycarbonate spacer, and a very thin reflector is also sandwiched between the two layers. To visualize this properly, you can see the image that will clearly explain what I was telling about. And this is about CDs and DVDs. I'm talking about Blu-rays. Blu-rays are quite different to CDs and DVDs because Blu-ray uses blue laser for its read and write operations. And if you take the CDs and DVDs, it uses a red color laser which is of typically 650 to 780 nanometers. But this blue color laser's wavelength is about 405 nanometers. That means that its pits and bumps can be much smaller. Since the nanometer of the blue laser is less, it can detect pits and bumps much easier, so that the pits and bump size can be smaller. And since the pits and bumps can be smaller, that means more number of pits and bumps can be added into the track, so that the Blu-ray disc will be able to store more data than normal DVDs or CDs. USB flash drives and removable hard disks are another type of offline storage devices. USB flash memories use solid state technology, the same thing which we saw in our previous slide, which is the SSD thing. And the same technology used in the SSD is again being used in these USB flash memories or drives. And then main advantage of these USB flash drives are that they are small and lightweight, so they can be used as small backups or even can be used to transfer files between a computer to another computer. The next thing is that a removable hard disk, and these removable hard disks can be connected to your computer via USB cable, and these HDDs are mostly used as a backup system. This is the end of our video. Hope you understood and got some valuable information out of this video. Thanks.